The focus of this video will be the RFIs module, how the RFIs are initiated, and what we do with them once the contractor has submitted an RFI to us. So first, we can find the RFIs module under the project workflows. Click on RFIs. Now right now, you'll notice that the views is selected for summary RFIs in review by ball and court. Currently on this project, there are no open RFIs, so you're not going to see anything here. But if you go to all RFIs, you'll see a whole list of everything that has been submitted and returned to the contractor. So let's start with an RFI that the contractor has already submitted, so we know what we will be looking for from the contractor. So when the contractor submits an RFI, get into the edit mode here. The contractor is going to be filling out the task name, the RFI number, the question that they have, giving as much detail as possible to make an easier review for the engineer. They can offer any proposed solutions that they might have. Down here, if they foresee any cost impact of any kind or any time impact, they would note that here. And if they do, they can post a rough ballpark of what they think it'll cost and how long it may take them or impact the project. Next, they'll indicate the priority level, which could be high, normal, or low. If there's a specification section or anything that would help clarify what the engineer or the reviewer should be looking at, they can indicate that in this field. Any drawing numbers can be entered to help clarify for the engineer of sheet numbers or construction notes or anything that we should be looking at. And then any comments the contractor may have regarding the RFI. Next, they will move over to the RFI initiation date. So that would be the date that they submit the RFI. And then down here, they can attach any drawings that would help the engineer or the reviewer. Similar to other modules, there will be an initiated by field, which would be the contractor, and then a ball and court field of where this item is to be sent to. Being that this RFI has already been closed, the final ball and court would remain the contractor in this case. So this is just some information for your knowledge of what you would see on an initial RFI that's being submitted to us. So once an RFI has been placed in your court, you'll get an email notification similar to this one here, which will basically give you updates of what occurred and what changed in that RFI since it's been submitted from the contractor. Easiest way to get into that RFI is to click on the link here in your email, which will take you directly to the RFI. Another way you could get into it would simply just to get back into VPO and get into your project RFIs module. But either way, you'll get back into the RFI and start reviewing the question from the contractor and become more familiar with the RFI prior to forwarding this on to the engineer. So once you're ready to begin your review of the RFI, select the edit item, run through the RFI questions, any proposed solutions, see if they have any additional comments. You can click on the attachment down here for more clarification on any issues. And then once you're familiar with it, go up to the discussion tab, type in the date, and provide an update which would show up in your weekly meeting minutes. Once you've updated your discussion tab, making sure to include the date prior to any updates, which should occur each time this item is transmitted between the engineer, CM, or the contractor. You would scroll over to the review tab. Now that we have an open RFI that we're currently reviewing and processing onto the engineer, we would select the in review, which prevents the contractor from seeing any notes that may be transmitted between the owner, CM, or engineer. We would scroll down through all the different fields that we could check. For cost or time impacts, we would wait on the engineer's response to see if they agree that it's a cost or time impact, and then we would base our acknowledgement off what we feel the engineer has provided. So again, scroll through all the fields down here, make sure that anything that is missing would be filled out. The new ball in court would go to the engineer. Again, I'll just put myself as the engineer. Here you can upload any additional attachments that you think might help the engineer in reviewing the RFI. And lastly, you're going to want to CC any additional team members that may be interested in the review. Once everything has been completed under the review tab and you filled out your discussion tab with the current date, you can go ahead and click save, which would then forward this on to the engineer for review. So once the engineer has reviewed the RFI that we just sent them and provided some kind of response or answer to the question, then send the ball in court back to us, in which again we get the similar email we talked about earlier notifying us of an RFI in our court, and we would eventually open that RFI, get into the edit mode, and we can scroll over to the review tab, and we would notice the response from the engineer. So every time somebody provides an update to the response, they would put per SWT or per Simplus and then the current date in which they're responding, and then provide their response or their comments underneath that date. So the next thing you'll notice is that the engineer is confirming that they do not believe there are any cost or time impacts. They've clicked the signature box, providing the green check. So based on the engineer's response on whether there's a time or cost impact, we would take into consideration what they feel, and we would either agree with it or not. If we don't agree with it, we can, call them back and discuss why. But eventually we would confirm our acknowledgement whether there is or is not a time impact, and we would click our signature box here as well. Moving further down the page, we've got our response. We reviewed our response and we agree with the response. So we would put the ball in court back to the contractor. Again, I'll just use myself for training. We would have the response date, response submitted by would be either the engineer or us, depending on who provided the actual response. We could upload any additional documentation and CC any additional team members that may be interested in reviewing the response. Now that we're ready to send the RFI response back to the contractor, it is no longer in review, so we will select the status to closed, and then we will move up to the discussion tab and update this section. Once you've updated your discussion comments and are ready to send this back to the contractor, scroll down and click Save. Once you've clicked Save, you'll be brought back to the RFI's homepage, in which you'll notice that all RFIs are now closed and the contractor has received their response.